Hello again, watch friends. Welcome back. I've been debating with myself on whether or not I should do a video of the Explorer. The more I think about it, the more I realize that there's a plethora of reviews on various websites, on watch forums, and on YouTube, and I'm not sure what I could add to the legend of Rolex or the Explorer in particular. Many of these reviews that you can find online are excellent and far better than what I could do or would do. So I really wonder if I should be even doing a video. On the other hand, I was thinking that whenever someone straps a watch on their wrist and they make the decision to choose a particular timekeeping device, there are a lot of decisions that go into that. There's the obvious ones about budget and type and brand, which brings into all kinds of historical aspects, legacy of the watch brand, how it fits someone's needs. But the one thing that I can offer is my own personal view on how I came to obtain this Rolex Explorer, what that process was, and what it means to me. So I think I will do a video, and this is it, on the Rolex Explorer. Now, I will be talking about my experience, and my experience in many ways is similar to other people's experience when they learn about Rolex, consider a Rolex, but it also is somewhat unique. What I don't plan to do is talk about the history of Rolex. That is pretty much well known. For example, I'm not going to mention that the first Rolex Explorer came out in 1953 after the Mount Everest ascent by Hillary and Norgay. I'm not going to mention that. Secondly, I'm not going to mention that in 2001 there was a new reference version of the Explorer, the 114270, which became known as the six-digit reference, and that replaced the 14270. And of course, as many people know, that had the new movement, the 3130. Third, I'm not going to mention that in 2010 that the reference 214-270, which was the newer version, which replaced the 114-270, had the caliber 3132 movement. It grew from 36 to 39 millimeters as far as the case goes. The bracelet now has solid end links. There was a new shock absorber system called Paraflex, which prevented sharp blows or minimized sharp blows to the watch. It had a new in-house parachrome hairspring, which according to Rolex was 10 times less susceptible to violent motions or vibrations, I should say, than the current version they had. And it had a new oyster lock folding clasp called the Easy Link, which provided a half a length's worth of adjustment, in other words 5 millimeters extension that can be used. Finally, I'm not going to mention in 2015 where Rolex came out with a 5-year warranty, although more on that later, and Rolex announced a 10-year service interval for the Explorer. So I'm not going to mention any of that. I'm going to talk about my personal experience with the Explorer. So given that there's no need to talk about the history of Rolex or the product line or the quality, all that's well known to many of us by now. But I want to mention that prior to obtaining this Explorer about 2 months ago, I had sort of a negative image of Rolex. I thought Rolex was for posers or rich guys that knew nothing about watches, that they wore Explorer as a sign of affluence or a sign of success, that they knew it was a quality watch, but that perhaps was all they knew, and that's why they had it. So that was kind of a negative view that I had. And it wasn't until I started doing my research, doing my due diligence on Rolex, learning about different models, learning about their manufacturing techniques, learning about what actually goes into the Rolex watch, and how they've made incremental improvements over the last 50 or 60 years, that I started to understand that, well, this was something special and something I needed to learn more about. So I visited several authorized dealers. And the more, because up to that point I had not seen a Rolex in person. So I've seen it in pictures, I've read about it, but I never knew anybody that had a Rolex, and of course I never had personal experience with one directly. Once I saw the various models in person, I was really floored with the quality. It's just amazing. And if you haven't, I highly recommend that you do that, just to get a feel for what a Rolex watch is all about. Now, I looked at various models. I was thinking about the Milgauss, I was thinking about the Submariner, and I was thinking about the Explorer. The Milgauss, to me, was a little bit too dressy. I loved the fact that it was unique. I loved the green crystal. Very, very appealing. Quite amazing, actually. And of course, that second hand, that lightning bolt second hand, I could just watch that all day. But I really thought that the Milgauss really was too dressy for me, and I don't really dress up that much. I wear business casual to work every day. I wear a suit a couple times a year, but I think the Milgauss would be sort of overdressing. So then I considered the Submariner as well, and I have several dive watches. I like the dive watches I have. For example, the Tudor Black Bay Blue. I have a couple of homages, and I have some others. And I really didn't think I needed another dive watch. I don't dive at all. I do what's called desk diving at the most. And I wasn't sure a dive watch was really what I needed. So that led me to the Explorer. And to me, the Explorer is it's several things. It can be dressy, so I could wear it with a suit if I wanted to, although I have other dress watches I often wear and do wear. It's a sports watch, so it would go well with casual clothes or weekend clothes. It is so minimalistic, elegant, that I was just drawn to it. So I decided to get the Explorer, and you're looking at it right now. What was interesting is one of the negative image I had about Rolexes is I thought before I purchased the Explorer, if I wore a Rolex, if someone would say to me, "Is that real? Is that a real Rolex, or is that a fake?" I don't know how I would answer that. And to me, that's sort of an insult. But that never occurred to me. It never occurred. I've worn this watch off and on for almost over 2 months. I wore it constantly for the first 2 weeks that I had it. Nobody even noticed. No one even said anything about it. Either way. So I like the fact that it is understated, elegant, and I think actually kind of cool. There's one other aspect that I wanted to avoid in potentially buying a Rolex, any Rolex or this Explorer in particular, is that of anyone thinking of me as someone who partakes of conspicuous consumption. Personally, I don't like to show off, and I was worried that that might be the case if I bought and wore a Rolex. I have to say that I'm extremely fortunate to be able to buy a Rolex timepiece. $6,000 for a watch, in the big picture of things, is obscene, really. There are a lot of people that can't even afford a $300 watch, let alone a $6,000 watch. And I try to live frugally. For example, I drive a 12-year-old luxury car that I purchased new. Granted, it's a luxury car. I bought it new 12 years ago, but there's no reason to get a new car every year or every 2 years. I try and make things last. I try and buy quality, and that's why I was considering a Rolex. But ultimately, I decided I don't care what other people think. If I like something and I can afford it, and it doesn't put my family's financial situation at risk, it doesn't jeopardize that, then why not? So, given that that's the case, I decided to go ahead with getting the Rolex Explorer. I also had to make a decision about where to buy it. And there's a lot of talk about gray market, that you can get watches significantly cheaper from the gray market. Gray market has watches that are really the same thing as the watches that are sold by authorized dealers. However, they don't give you the manufacturer's warranty. They give you their own warranty. And of course, the value of that depends upon who the seller is. And when I compared the price of buying this Explorer from a gray market and buying it from an authorized dealer who gave me a very, very good price, the difference was only about $400 or $500. And given that Rolex now has a 5-year warranty that comes with the watch, I thought that was pretty much of a wash. That sure, I could have saved $400 or $500 and gotten the watch cheaper, but I would have got it with a warranty from the company, for example, like Joma Shop. I've read both good and bad experiences with Joma Shop. But getting it directly from an authorized dealer with the Rolex warranty for 5 years, that additional amount of money, that difference in money, to me was kind of like insurance. So that's why that was a wash, and that's why I went with the authorized dealer. I also considered looking at various versions of this watch. So this particular watch came out in 2016, and if we take a look at it here, you can see that the numerals have luminous paint in the numerals, and the hands, if you look at the hour hand, you see that the hour hand actually reaches the minute track. It's just past the 5 there, you can see, whereas the previous model before 2016, which actually had the same reference number as this watch, had white gold numerals that weren't loomed, and the hour hand was a little bit shorter. Actually, both the hour hand and the minute hand were slightly thinner. The hour hand, excuse me, the minute hand was slightly shorter. The hour hand was the same. So the minute hand didn't quite reach the minute track around the circumference there. And some people even said that in 2010, when they went from one version to the next version, that they used, because the previous version was 36 millimeter instead of 39, which is this size, that they perhaps used up hands from the previous version. I don't know if that's true or not. That's what I've read, maybe an urban legend. In any case, I wanted to buy the current version with the full manufacturer's warranty. The other possibility was to buy the 36 millimeter size, but then again, that would have been a pre-owned watch. But if you buy a pre-owned watch from a good dealer, you minimize any kind of risks or some of the risks in getting vintage, although it's not very old. And secondly, the 36 millimeter size I thought was a little bit too small for my 7.5-inch wrist. So just a point of nomenclature, this version is considered the Mark II because it has the longer minute hand and the lume numbers, whereas the previous version, 2016, from 2010 to 2016, is considered the Mark I version. Just some additional specs on the watch. The thickness is 11.3 millimeters, so it's a relatively thin watch. You can see the sign crown there, and by the way, the crown is a screw-down crown. The lug-to-lug distance from here to here, from this point to this point, is 45.5 millimeters. So it's not a big watch. It really wears nicely on the wrist, and it does have, as you can see, curved lugs that hug the wrist nicely. One of the things that drew me to this watch was that it doesn't have the glide lock. Oh, there's still a piece of tape on there. Doesn't have the glide lock adjustment, but it has the what's called Easy Link, which if you look inside here, you can see if I pop it out, I can fold it this way or fold it this way and get that 5 millimeter extension on it. And of course the bracelet is beautiful, really nicely finished, and you can see that it tapers from the case, narrows down to the clasp, which also gives it sort of a smallish feeling, but it gives it some presence. The Explorer has 100-meter water resistant, so that's a little over 300 feet, which is sufficient for, in my case, doing the dishes, showering, maybe swimming, certainly not diving, but if you get caught in the rain or you use it in just regular activities, it's not going to be a problem. Just, of course, make sure this crown is screwed down. It's got Rolex's 904L stainless steel case. As I mentioned before, 3132 movement. And as you'll see up above, its accuracy is 1 or 2 seconds, plus 1 or 2 seconds per day. So it is extremely accurate. The specs are better than the Kosk. Rolex also does their measurement of the accuracy with the movement inside the watch, unlike Kosk, where movements are measured in bulk outside of watches. So what do I like about this watch? Well, I like it. It's very comfortable on the wrist. So let's do a wrist shot here. And you can see that it just, what I think looks just, let me move the glove, it looks just perfect on my wrist. I love the way the bracelet tapers down to the clasp. The Clasp has a very solid feeling. Don't mind that. It's not really scratches. It looks like there's still some tape from when it was brand new. I need to remove that tape. Very, very nice on the wrist. I also like the fact that it has excellent lume. You'll see a lume shot up above here. I've worn this watch to bed repeatedly, and I'd say the lume lasts. I usually go to bed about 10 o'clock at night. I get up about 5:30 in the morning, and the lume lasts just about to when I get up. So anytime during the night when I want to see what time it is, I can just glance at my wrist and I can see it, thanks to the excellent lume. I also like the fact that, to me, the Explorer is the least blingy of Rolex watches, and that's important to me. I don't really like bling. I don't wear rings or other kinds of jewelry, and as most watch collectors know, a watch is really one form of jewelry that men wear, and I like the fact that this is understated, elegant, and quite attractive. Finally, I like the fact that it exudes quality. I mean, you look at it, you feel the heft of it. When I wear this, I know that I have a very high quality timepiece on my wrist that is robust and is going to last me many, many years. In fact, I'm sure it's going to outlast me. It will be something for my heirs. What don't I like? Well, one problem that I have, and many people who also have this Rolex Explorer have mentioned, it's a real smudge magnet. And I don't normally touch the dial or put fingerprints on it or manhandle it, but for some reason, just brushing against paper or my clothing or whatever, it almost seems like whenever I look at the dial, there's a smudge on it, so I have to wipe it off with a cloth. It's a minor problem, not a big deal, but that's one of the things that I don't like about it. I don't like the fact that it doesn't have the Submariner glide lock adjustment. To me, the Rolex Submariner glide lock on the bracelet, on the clasp, is a wonderful thing where you can adjust the size of the bracelet over 3 or 4 or 5 millimeters, quite a lot. This only has, like I mentioned, that one little flip tab that can give you about 5 millimeter extension as opposed to maybe 4 or 5 times that amount. But again, that's a minor thing. This, I've never had a problem wearing this. It's almost the end of summer. During the summer, when it's hot and humid, I've had to expand it when my wrist expands, and when it's cooler, I put it back, and it's just fine. So that's really not a problem. So there really aren't dislikes that would prevent me from having this watch as a keeper. This will be a long-term addition to my watch collection. I really enjoy wearing it. Like I said, it's beautiful, it's classic, and I've really gotten over, fortunately, my negative view of Rolex and the stigma of Rolex watches and people who wear them. I wish that Rolexes weren't so expensive. I know that in, I guess, the late 70s, Rolex switched from being a true tool watch to being a luxury watch, and that's started the march to price increase. But when you compare this watch to other watches in the same category or same price range, this watch really is extremely competitive. So, bottom line, it's a fantastic watch. I'm glad I have it. I think it's beautiful. So, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.